Hey everyone, welcome back to the Study English Online, your podcast for easy English conversation and real daily life talk.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So, Jake, I have a confession before we start.
Oh no, another confession? Go on.
I was supposed to send an important email 3 days ago. It takes maybe 5 minutes to write, and instead, I've reorganized my entire desk, cleaned my kitchen twice, and watched way too many videos about, honestly, nothing important at all.
That's such a classic case. The smaller and easier the task, somehow the harder it is to actually start it.
Exactly. And I think almost everyone listening right now has a version of this story. Some task sitting there, waiting, while we do literally anything else.
Right, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. Why we procrastinate, and more importantly, what we can actually do to stop, or at least do it less.
This is such a relatable topic because procrastination doesn't just affect lazy people or unmotivated people. It affects almost everyone, including very hardworking, disciplined people.
Right, even people who seem super productive still put things off sometimes. It's a very human thing, not a character flaw.
Actually, I read somewhere that even famous, highly successful writers and scientists have talked openly about their own struggles with procrastination.
Really? That's oddly comforting, honestly.
Right? It kind of proves that procrastination isn't really about talent, intelligence, or ambition. It's just a common pattern in how human brains work.
And we'll also connect this to English learning, because procrastination is honestly one of the biggest reasons people don't make progress with a new language. Before we start, quick reminder, if you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who might need a little encouragement today.
And tell us in the comments, what's a task you've been avoiding? Writing it down is honestly already a small step toward doing it.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start simple. Jake, how would you explain procrastination in your own words?
I'd say it's delaying something you know you should do, usually by doing something easier or more enjoyable instead, even though you know the delay will probably cause more stress later.
That's a really good definition, especially that last part. Even though you know it'll cause more stress later. That's really the strange, confusing part of procrastination.
Right. It's not that we don't know it's a bad idea. We know. We just do it anyway.
Exactly. And that's actually really important to understand. Procrastination isn't really about laziness or not knowing what to do. It's much more about how we feel in the moment.
Say more about that.
Well, research on procrastination shows it's often less about time management and more about emotional management. We avoid a task because doing it creates an uncomfortable feeling, like stress, boredom, anxiety, or self-doubt.
Oh, that's interesting. So procrastination is really us trying to escape a bad feeling, not trying to escape the task itself.
Exactly. And when we procrastinate, we do feel better, at least for a little while, because we've avoided that uncomfortable feeling.
But of course, the task is still there, waiting, and now there's less time, which usually creates even more stress.
Right. It's a short-term relief that creates a bigger long-term problem. That's really the whole trap of procrastination.
It's honestly a bit of a strange trap, too, because in the moment, avoiding the task genuinely feels like the smart, comfortable choice.
Right, and that's exactly why willpower alone often isn't enough to fix it. The avoidance feels rewarding right away, while the benefit of actually doing the task is somewhere off in the future, harder for our brain to feel strongly.
That's such an important point because a lot of people blame themselves for not having enough discipline when really they're fighting against a very natural, very human brain pattern.
Exactly. Understanding this doesn't excuse procrastination, but it does help remove some of the unnecessary guilt so we can focus on practical solutions instead. Okay, Jake, tell us about a time procrastination really affected you.
Oh, I have a great, slightly embarrassing one. Years ago, I had a big project due for work, and I had almost 3 weeks to finish it.
3 weeks sounds like plenty of time.
It really was, but every day I told myself, I'll start tomorrow, I still have time. And this went on day after day for almost 2.5 weeks.
Oh no!
Yes, and suddenly I had only 3 or 4 days left, and a project that clearly needed more time than that. I ended up working late nights, feeling stressed, anxious, and honestly not proud of the final result either.
That sounds exhausting.
It really was, and the strange thing is, during those first 2.5 weeks, I wasn't even relaxing properly. I felt this background stress the whole time, this quiet feeling of, I really should be working on that.
So you avoided the task, but you didn't actually escape the stress of it.
Exactly. That's such an important point. Procrastination doesn't remove the stress, it just delays it and usually makes it worse.
Right. So instead of 3 weeks of manageable, spread out work, you ended up with 3 or 4 days of intense, overwhelming work.
Precisely. And after that experience, I really started paying attention to why I kept avoiding that project in the first place.
And what did you figure out?
Honestly, I think I was scared the project wouldn't turn out well even if I tried my best. So avoiding it felt safer than starting and potentially failing.
Oh, that's such a common reason. Fear of not doing something perfectly, so we avoid doing it at all.
Right, and looking back, I realized that fear was actually a little irrational too. The project probably wouldn't have turned out perfectly no matter when I started, but starting earlier would have at least given me room to fix things calmly instead of scrambling at the last minute.
That's such a valuable lesson, though, even if it came from a stressful experience.
Definitely, and honestly, that experience is part of why I now try to notice early on when I'm avoiding something instead of only realizing it once the deadline is dangerously close.
Okay, Anna, your turn. What's your procrastination story? Mine is about learning to drive, actually.
Oh, interesting. Tell us.
I wanted to learn how to drive for years, genuinely years, but I kept putting it off. I'll start next month. I'll start after this busy period at work. I'll start when I have more free time.
And did any of those right times ever actually come?
Never. There was always a reason to wait a little longer. And honestly, looking back, I think the real reason was fear. Fear of being bad at it, fear of making mistakes in front of an instructor, fear of feeling embarrassed.
That makes a lot of sense. Learning something new, especially something that feels a little risky, can bring up a lot of that fear.
Right, and instead of admitting that fear directly, my brain just quietly avoided the whole topic year after year.
So how did you finally start?
A friend basically booked the first lesson for me and just told me, "You're going, no more excuses." Having that outside push was honestly what finally got me moving.
And how did that first lesson go?
It was nervous and clumsy, honestly, but nowhere near as scary as I had imagined for years. The fear in my head was much bigger than the actual reality.
That's such a common pattern with procrastination, isn't it? We build the task up into something huge and scary in our minds, much bigger than it actually turns out to be.
Exactly. And once I finally started, I actually felt relief, not more stress. The stress had mostly come from avoiding it for so long.
How long did it take you to actually feel comfortable driving once you finally started?
Honestly, just a few weeks, which, looking back, feels almost funny considering I spent years avoiding those same few weeks of learning.
That's such a powerful example of how procrastination can quietly cost us far more time than the task itself would have ever taken.
Right, years of low-level worry and avoidance compared to a few weeks of lessons. The math really doesn't make sense until you understand it's about emotion, not logic.
Let's talk a little about why this happens in a simple, easy-to-understand way.
Yes, our brains are actually built to avoid discomfort and seek comfort. That's a very natural, old survival instinct.
Right, so when a task feels boring, difficult, confusing, or scary, our brain naturally looks for an easier, more comfortable alternative, like checking your phone, cleaning something, or doing a smaller, easier task instead.
And here's the tricky part. In the moment, choosing the easier thing genuinely feels better. Our brain gets a small reward from that comfort, even though it's the wrong long-term choice.
Right, it's like our brain cares much more about how do I feel right now than how will I feel later.
Exactly, and that's actually the core battle inside procrastination. Comfort right now versus benefit later.
And when the task feels really big or really unclear, that battle becomes even harder to win because the task feels overwhelming, not just uncomfortable.
Right. A big, unclear task creates more anxiety, and anxiety usually pushes us further toward avoidance, not less.
It's a bit of a cycle too, isn't it? The bigger the task feels, the more anxiety it creates. And the more anxiety it creates, the more we avoid it, which then makes the task feel even bigger by the time we finally look at it again.
That's such an accurate description of the cycle. And honestly, understanding this cycle is often the first step to breaking it. Because once you see the pattern clearly, it's easier to interrupt it early instead of letting it spiral.
Right. Awareness alone doesn't fix everything, but it definitely helps because you can catch yourself mid-avoidance and consciously choose a small first step instead. Let's go through a few common reasons people procrastinate so listeners can recognize their own pattern. Reason 1. The task feels too big.
When a task feels huge, overwhelming, or unclear, our brain often avoids even starting because we don't know exactly where to begin.
Right, like Jake's story about his big project. 3 weeks felt so far away that the size of the task didn't feel urgent yet, even though it should have.
This is actually really common with anything that doesn't have a clear first step, like writing a book, planning a wedding, or even just cleaning an extremely messy room.
When your brain can't easily picture a starting point, it's much easier to just avoid the whole thing entirely and think about it later. Reason 2. Fear of failing or fear of not being perfect.
This connects to my driving story. Sometimes we avoid a task because we're scared we won't do it well, so avoiding it feels safer than trying and possibly failing.
Right, if you never start, you never officially fail, at least in your own mind. But of course, not starting is its own kind of failure too.
This type of procrastination often shows up with tasks that matter a lot to us personally, ironically, because we care so much about the outcome, the fear of doing it badly feels bigger too.
That's such an interesting point. The more something matters to us, sometimes the more we avoid it, not less.
Reason 3. The task feels boring. Sometimes it's simple. The task is boring, and our brain naturally reaches for something more stimulating instead, like social media or an interesting video.
Boring tasks compete directly against fun, easy distractions, and unfortunately, distractions usually win in the short term.
I think almost everyone has had this experience with something like paperwork, filling out forms, or doing repetitive administrative tasks.
Right. Our brain just isn't very interested, so it keeps quietly pulling our attention toward literally anything else.
I actually find this happens a lot with tasks that are important but not urgent. Things like organizing files, updating a resume, or reviewing old notes.
Right. None of those things are exciting, but they're also not screaming urgent either, so it's very easy to let them sit untouched for a long time. Reason 4. No clear deadline or consequence. When there's no immediate deadline or no immediate consequence for delaying, our brain doesn't feel urgency, so it's easy to keep pushing the task further away.
Right. I'll do it eventually feels comfortable when there's no clear moment where eventually actually needs to happen.
This is actually why personal goals like learning a new skill or starting a hobby get procrastinated on so often. There's usually no external deadline pushing you forward.
Right, and this is exactly why creating your own small deadlines, even informal ones, can be so helpful. Telling a friend, I'll finish this by Friday, creates a small, gentle sense of accountability, even without an official boss or teacher involved.
That's a great point. Sometimes we need to build our own structure, especially for things that matter to us personally but don't come with a built-in deadline.
And sometimes procrastination isn't really about the task at all. It's simply that we're mentally tired and our brain doesn't have the energy for anything effortful.
Right. This is different from avoidance out of fear. Sometimes it's genuinely just exhaustion, and the real fix isn't motivation, it's rest.
It's worth checking in with yourself here. Are you avoiding this task because it scares you, or because you're simply running low on energy right now?
Those two situations need very different solutions, so recognizing which one you're actually dealing with really helps.
Right. If it's genuine exhaustion, pushing yourself harder usually backfires, and rest becomes the actually productive choice, even though it might feel counterintuitive.
And if it's fear or overwhelm disguised as tiredness, then a small first step, like we mentioned earlier, is usually more helpful than simply resting more.
So it really helps to pause for a moment and honestly ask yourself, am I truly tired right now, or am I avoiding something uncomfortable? Okay, now let's get practical. Let's share some real strategies that can help reduce procrastination.
Strategy 1. Break the task into tiny pieces.
This connects to our very first episode on small habits. Instead of finish the whole project, try just write the first sentence or open the document and read the instructions.
Right, a huge, unclear task feels scary. A tiny, specific first step feels much more manageable, almost too small to avoid. In my big project story, if I had told myself, just open the document and write one paragraph instead of thinking about the whole massive project, I probably would have started much sooner.
I think the key word here is specific. Work on the project is vague and a little scary. Write the first sentence of the introduction is small, clear, and much less intimidating.
Strategy 2. Use the 2-minute rule.
Here's a simple trick. Tell yourself you'll just work on the task for 2 minutes. That's it. Just 2 minutes, and then you can stop if you really want to.
This works because 2 minutes feels so easy that there's almost no reason to say no to it.
And often, once you start, you naturally keep going past 2 minutes, because starting was really the hardest part, not continuing.
I've used this trick for cleaning, actually. I'll just tidy for 2 minutes, and most of the time I end up cleaning for 20.
Right. Momentum tends to build naturally once you're already moving. The hard part is really just that first push.
Strategy 3. Remove distractions before you start.
Put your phone in another room, close unnecessary tabs, and make your environment as free of distractions as possible before starting a task.
Right. If the easy, comfortable distraction isn't right next to you, it becomes much less tempting to reach for it.
This is actually a really underrated strategy. We often blame ourselves for lack of willpower, when really the environment around us is quietly working against our focus the whole time.
Right. It's usually much easier to change your environment than to constantly fight your own willpower.
Strategy 4. Set a clear, specific time to start. Instead of a vague plan like, I'll do it sometime today, choose a specific time, like, I'll start at 3 o'clock.
A specific time creates a clear moment of commitment, instead of leaving it open to being pushed back again and again.
You can even say it out loud or write it somewhere visible. At 3 o'clock, I start. It sounds simple, but that clarity really does help.
Strategy 5. Forgive yourself for past procrastination.
This one surprised me when I first read about it, but research actually shows that forgiving yourself for procrastinating in the past can reduce future procrastination. That's interesting. Why do you think that works?
I think it's because guilt and shame actually make the task feel even more uncomfortable, which pushes us to avoid it even more.
Right, so being harsh with yourself doesn't create motivation, it usually creates more avoidance instead.
Exactly. So instead of thinking, I'm so lazy, I always do this, it helps more to think, okay, I procrastinated, that's normal, let's start now.
It's such a gentle but powerful shift, treating yourself with a little more kindness instead of constant self-criticism.
And finally, try connecting the task to a real personal reason, not just I have to, but I want to because.
Right, I need to write this email feels heavy. I want to write this email so I can finally move forward on this project I care about feels a little more motivating. Small shifts in words, but it can genuinely change how a task feels in your mind.
Let's clear up a few myths about procrastination before we continue.
Myth 1. Procrastinators are just lazy people. As we discussed earlier, procrastination is much more about managing uncomfortable emotions than about laziness or lack of effort.
Right. Plenty of hardworking, disciplined people procrastinate on specific tasks, especially ones connected to fear or uncertainty.
Myth 2. I work better under pressure, so procrastination actually helps me. A lot of people say this, including me sometimes, honestly.
I've said this too, but research generally shows that while pressure can create a short burst of focus, the overall quality of work and our stress levels are usually worse under last-minute pressure compared to steady, spread-out effort.
Right, that late-night rush might feel productive in the moment, but it usually comes with more mistakes, more stress, and less enjoyment of the process.
I think this myth is so popular because the pressure does create a burst of energy right at the deadline, and that burst feels satisfying in the moment, but it hides the cost of all the stress and worry that built up during the avoided days before it.
Right, it's a bit like only remembering the exciting finish line and forgetting the exhausting, anxious run leading up to it.
Myth 3. If I just try harder, I'll stop procrastinating. Willpower alone often isn't enough, especially for tasks connected to fear, boredom, or overwhelm.
Right, that's why the practical strategies we're sharing today focus on changing the situation. Small tasks, fewer distractions, clearer starting points, rather than just telling yourself to try harder.
Willpower is limited and unreliable, but a good system, small steps, clear plans, fewer distractions, works even on your low motivation days.
We actually got a message from a listener that fits perfectly here. She said she used to procrastinate constantly on studying English, always telling herself she'd start seriously next week.
A very familiar story.
Right, and next week kept becoming another next week. For almost a year, she said.
What finally changed for her?
She told us she stopped trying to plan a big, serious study routine and instead just committed to one small, almost embarrassingly easy task, opening an English app for 2 minutes each morning while her coffee brewed.
That sounds exactly like our 2-minute rule strategy.
Exactly. And she said within the first week, most days she ended up studying for 10 or 15 minutes simply because starting was no longer the huge barrier it used to be.
That's such a strong example of how the size of the first step matters so much more than people usually expect.
Right, a small, unavoidable first step quietly removes the biggest obstacle, the moment of starting.
Let's connect this directly to English learning now, since that's really the heart of this podcast.
Procrastination is honestly one of the biggest silent barriers for English learners. People plan to study, but somehow the actual studying keeps getting pushed to later.
Right, and often it's for the exact reasons we mentioned. The task feels too big. I need to study for 2 hours, or it feels boring, like memorizing long grammar rules.
So the same fixes apply here too. Instead of study English for 2 hours, try watch one 3-minute video in English, something small enough that there's no real excuse to avoid it.
Right, and if grammar rules feel boring, choose something more enjoyable, like listening to a podcast or watching a short, interesting video, especially in the beginning.
The goal is to lower the barrier to starting, so English practice feels like a small, easy action, not a big, intimidating task.
And remember, just like our small habits episode, consistency in small doses beats occasional big study sessions that keep getting delayed.
I think a lot of English learners actually procrastinate because they feel embarrassed about their current level, almost like my driving story, fear of not being good enough yet.
That's such a good connection. If speaking English feels scary because of possible mistakes, it's easier to just avoid speaking altogether and stick to quiet, private studying instead.
Right, but just like our earlier strategies, breaking it down helps here too. Instead of, I need to have a full conversation in English, try, I'll say one sentence out loud today, even if it's just to yourself.
And forgiving yourself for mistakes instead of feeling embarrassed by them makes it much easier to keep practicing consistently instead of quietly avoiding speaking altogether.
Exactly. All the same tools we talked about for general procrastination apply beautifully to language learning too. We got a great question from a listener. What if I procrastinate because I genuinely don't know how to do the task? It's not fear, I just don't know where to start.
That's a really important distinction and a great question.
Right. In that case, the real problem isn't emotional avoidance, it's a lack of information or a lack of clear plan.
So the fix here is a little different. Instead of pushing yourself to just start, the first small step should be finding information, watching a tutorial, or asking someone with more experience.
Right. Once you have a little more clarity on how to begin, the fear or confusion around the task usually shrinks quite a bit on its own.
That's such a good point. Not all procrastination comes from the same cause, so it helps to notice which type you're actually dealing with.
We also got a second question. What if I procrastinate on almost everything, not just one specific task? It feels like a bigger pattern in my life.
That's a heavier question, and honestly, if procrastination feels like a constant, overwhelming pattern across most areas of your life, it can sometimes be connected to deeper stress, anxiety, or even burnout.
Right. In that case, the small strategies we shared today can still help a little, but it might also be worth talking to a doctor or a therapist, especially if it's affecting your daily life and well-being significantly.
We're not doctors or therapists ourselves, just two people sharing everyday English conversation. So for anything that feels bigger than everyday task avoidance, professional support is a really valuable option.
That said, for the everyday, occasional procrastination most of us experience, the small strategies we talked about today genuinely do help a lot. Before we wrap up, I want to mention something important. Procrastinating sometimes doesn't make someone lazy, broken, or a bad person.
Right. It's an incredibly common, very human pattern connected to how our brains naturally handle discomfort and uncertainty.
So if you procrastinate sometimes, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means you're human, like literally everyone else.
Right. The goal isn't to become a person who never procrastinates ever. That's probably not realistic for most people.
The goal is just to procrastinate a little less and to be a little kinder to yourself when it happens anyway.
I think that's honestly the most freeing message from this whole episode. Progress here isn't about becoming a perfectly disciplined person overnight.
Right. It's about noticing your patterns, understanding why they happen, and slowly building small tools and habits that make starting a little easier each time.
And even small improvements add up in a big way over months and years, just like we talked about in our very first episode.
Exactly. Reducing procrastination even a little consistently can genuinely change how much stress and how much guilt you carry through your daily life.
I've been putting off this task for days.
I decided to just start for 2 minutes, and I ended up finishing the whole thing.
I removed my phone from the room so I could focus.
I forgave myself for procrastinating and just got started.
This task felt too big, so I broke it into smaller steps.
Let's also try a couple of slightly longer sentences, useful for describing your own experience.
Even though I was scared of making mistakes, I finally started speaking English out loud.
I used to think I worked better under pressure, but honestly, I just felt more stressed.
Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, I just picked a specific time and started.
Try saying one of these sentences out loud today, maybe changing a small detail to match your own situation, whether it's about English learning or any other task you've been avoiding.
Let's review a few useful words from today's episode.
First, to put something off, meaning to delay doing something.
For example, I keep putting off cleaning my closet.
Next, overwhelming, meaning something that feels like too much to handle at once.
For example, the whole project felt overwhelming, so I broke it into small pieces.
We also used the word avoidance, meaning the act of staying away from something, usually because it feels uncomfortable.
For example, my avoidance of that email only made the situation more stressful.
And finally, to forgive yourself, meaning to stop feeling guilty or angry with yourself about something in the past.
For example, it's important to forgive yourself and just start again instead of feeling stuck in guilt.
One more useful word, momentum, meaning the energy or force that keeps something moving once it has started.
For example, once I finished the first small task, I had momentum to keep working on the rest.
And a barrier, meaning something that blocks or makes it harder to start or continue an action.
For example, fear of making mistakes was a real barrier to practicing my English speaking.
Try using one or two of these words today, maybe even in a comment describing your own procrastination story.
We talked about what procrastination really is, an emotional escape, not just laziness.
We shared our own stories, Jake's big work project, and my years of avoiding driving lessons.
We talked about why our brains procrastinate, choosing short-term comfort over long-term benefit.
We covered common reasons people procrastinate: big tasks, fear of failure, boredom, no deadline, or simple exhaustion.
Practical strategies, breaking tasks into tiny pieces, the 2-minute rule, removing distractions, setting specific times, forgiving yourself, and connecting tasks to real reasons.
We connected this to English learning too, and answered a couple of listener questions about different causes of procrastination.
Before we close, here's one last small tip. Try picking just one small task you've been avoiding right now, today, and apply the 2-minute rule to it.
Right. Don't wait for a better moment or more motivation. Just 2 minutes, starting today on one single thing you've been putting off.
It could be that email, that phone call, that small chore, or even just opening your English learning app for 2 minutes.
Small, immediate action, exactly the theme running through this whole episode.
Next time, we're going to talk about something closely connected to today's topic: how to stay motivated when life feels hard, especially during difficult or stressful periods.
So, if procrastination has ever connected to feeling low on motivation or energy, that next episode will pair really nicely with everything we discussed today.
We'll share more personal stories, practical tips, and of course, useful English vocabulary and practice sentences, just like always.
We're really looking forward to that one.
If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what's one small task you'll finally start today.
Also, if you've listened this far, that's already a small habit of consistent English practice. So genuinely well done.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.